MiniWarGaming's The Utgard Infestation!
Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and it's time for the final story time for the Utgard Infestation 40k narrative campaign. If you have not yet, we've already done the last 2 battles, so go and watch those. They are available the 6As for free and 6Bs in the vault. So this will have spoilers. It will talk about what happened in those missions, and so if you don't want spoilers, go back and watch those now. You have been warned. So, what happened? Well, the Imperial Guard assault towards the innards of the hive ship succeeded, although there was some cost. There was actually a very great cost. You see, in the middle of this battle, Selene and her Celestians were fighting when a Carnifex came roaring down and trampling through her forces. At the same time, a group of Hormagaunts charged Selene, so Selene was busy fending the Hormagaunts off as this Carnifex was just tearing through the Celestians as they tried desperately to hurl crack grenades and attach melta-bombs to it, but they weren't able to. There was even more sisters who joined in the battle, desperately trying to fend off the Carnifex as it was determinedly pushing through the Celestians, ignoring all the other ones around it, and going after Selene. And it crushed down, it got to Selene, and scythed and crushed and trampled her until she was dead, her relic blade clattering to the ground beside her. The Tyranids were then still dealt with, the Carnifex eventually killed, but nearby Helen, the Sister Superior who was suspicious of Inquisitor Croyle, watched in horror as Selene was trampled, but she couldn't help because she was busy fending off a Tervagon, a huge Tervagon, and Termagants that were swarming in. But she, in all of her rage, finally struck it down, and it died, bursting a huge psychic wave and killing Termagants nearby. And the Carnifex went down as well, and the rest of the Tyranid forces were killed or sent fleeing. But Helen rushes over to Selene and sees her battered form, and she is beyond. She's not even like going to give final words at that point. She's dead. She's just beyond any repair or any hope of healing. And as she feels this despair wash over her, she looks down and she sees this relic blade of hers. And as she's looking at this relic blade, the Inquisitor walks up and sees Selene, and Helen looks up, has hatred in her eyes, feeling that he is responsible for all this evil that has happened. Croyle then says to Helen that don't worry about Selene. She has died in honor and defense of the Empire and of the Imperium and the Emperor himself, and that she should be proud that she can be now named along one of the saints of the Sisters of Battle of old. And then he walks away to marshal the forces and get ready for the final assault into the actual hive ship. Helen is furious of this, and how dare he talk about what she's honored by doing or not doing. And so she looks over and does something that's kind of against protocol. She picks up the relic blade for herself and decides she is going to wield it to fight the Tyranids and gain revenge and eventually deal with the Inquisitor himself once this is all over. When she picks up the relic blade, she feels a surge of power and faith and confidence that she, of course, attributes to the power that comes from the blade and the faith that is within her to purge all of the Emperor's enemies. And she rallies whatever left of the sisters and goes into battle alongside the Inquisitor, even though she doesn't want to be beside him. And so we go into the belly of the beast. Unfortunately, the armor had to be left behind because at this point it just became too much of a choke hold or a choke area for vehicles. They could get some walkers through, but for the most part they just had to stream all of their forces, all their troops into this last area. And they go in and they have one of the hardest fights they've had for all this time, as all of the Tyranid organisms are mustered. The rest of the armor that couldn't make it through formed a defensive perimeter and were just fighting for their lives to keep out all the other Tyranid forces that were trying to converge on this hive ship. And as they went in, there was even a mighty hive tyrant that was there leading all of the forces. And there were gene stealers, and there were warriors, and there was even another Tervagon, and they marched through, and they cost the many lives of the Imperium, of the Sisters of Battle, the Imperial Guard, and even of the Inquisitor's retinue. Most of his retinue was killed as well. But in the end, he marched up and he just chopped down that hive tyrant with all of his biomancy powers and the force sword, and he bellowed out in rage as he struck it down, and it was able to finally push them back. And then they were able to purge the belly of the hive ship. They destroyed the synapse node, they destroyed every birthing chamber they could find, and they drove out every last Tyranid organism and burned them and trapped them and destroyed them. So they came out bloodied, they came out with severe injuries, and they came out with many of their forces dead, but they were successful in decapitating the hive there. And this basically is the end of the Genestealer cult and the Tyranid forces. Now, unfortunately, it's not quite the end. They have to spend the next several years hunting down all the little pockets of resistance and all the places where the Genestealer cults try to start up again. Because even if just one Genestealer is successful and surviving, it can eventually start it all over again. Although in this case, without the Hive ship, they would have to wait for another Hive fleet to arrive. But it could still provide the demise of this planet. So they have to be ever vigilant forevermore, because no matter how much they fight, there can always be one more Genestealer hanging around. But for now, they are victorious. And Helen, the Sister Superior, of course, who's wielding this relic blade, comes out a few days later and decides that it's time to deal with this Inquisitor. So she inquires after this Inquisitor and finds out he's already gone, that he's already left. She contacts the Imperial Guard commander and the captain of the cruiser, and they have no idea where he went or how he got off the planet. There were, of course, other ships that he could have possibly taken, but they didn't know, and they figured that he would have left with them under the full forces of the cruiser to go wherever he had to go next. But he didn't. He just left. This makes her even more suspicious and furious. She's just angry beyond all just anything, because he's left them to clean up this huge mess that she now, just whether it's mistakenly or not, just feels that he caused so many of these problems, and now he just left because, well, the main forces dealt with, I've learned what I need to learn, and he just leaves, just dishonoring the sisters, dishonoring the Imperium, and she's just furious. She vows one day that she will deal with that Inquisitor, although she doesn't know how or when, but she will. And that ends the Utgard Infestation 40k narrative campaign. I hope that you've enjoyed this one. I've enjoyed it immensely. Leland was awesome, so a special thank you goes to Leland for coming in. He came in, I think it was a total of 10 days of his volunteer time to help film this 40k narrative campaign. So thank you very much. And he was awesome to play against. He was so much fun. He played so well to the narrative, and he really helped. He was a co-creator in this narrative campaign, which is what we always hope that the players who we play against will be co-creators of our videos. And he contributed so much. So we're very thankful to him. And you can probably look forward to seeing him again in future narrative campaigns if everything works well. And so we hope to have him back again for future ones. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more 40k narrative campaigns and battle reports and painting tutorials and everything else that we're doing as well. And happy wargaming.